You know, rather than going over a pattern or a groove or maybe doing a cover, I thought I'd do something a little bit different because a couple of friends of mine have asked me to explain to them my teaching philosophies, how I get my kids, whether they're 6 years old or 60 years old, to do what they need to do to become better musicians, better drummers. Well, I thought, let me do what I do to them on their first lesson with me, because I got to tell you, the first lesson is really panic for some of the younger ones because they have no idea what we're going to be talking about or what we're going to be doing, and they're very nervous. And I try to at least calm them down to the fact of letting them know what they're going to be expected to do. Well, I have 4 segments of teaching for what I do here on the drum set. Those 4 particular topics are: 1, time; 2, technique; 3, reading; and 4, what I call musicality. So let me go through and explain each one so that I can show you how they're really like this puzzle all fitting together. The first thing that we work on, of course, is technique. Well, that's got to be a given for just about every instrument. But it's the correct technique, the correct grip, the correct posture, the correct seating positions, the correct position behind the drum. Now when I say correct, with the one that I guess is most accepted, but what I feel puts them at a relaxed state ready to play. The first things that we do, I guess I'm very old school, are the rudiments. The rudiments of drumming. Now, I don't go through all 26 or 40 or however many rudiments that you can expect, as most rudimental drummers do, but there are some basic ones that we work on. Most of the rolls, the singles and the doubles, and I've just started working on some with the triples, the 5-stroke roll, the 7-stroke roll, the roughs, the flams, the basic ones. These are the ones that get your hands moving correctly, and not only playing correctly, but learning how to stop correctly, because you have to be able to not only start your playing, but exit your playing as well. So I try to make sure that everything there is balanced. We work in the hands first, and then we add in the feet. First, the foot, the bass drum foot. I get them, my philosophy is play really well with one bass drum and then learn 2, rather than try to play 2 and step all over yourself, I guess. I find it a lot easier to tame the bass drum by working with a single bass drum for the most part of their elementary type lessons. That's the technique part, but that's only one segment. The next segment, which is most important, is time. And time not like on your wristwatch, but the steadiness of being able to keep that internal clock going no matter what. Time is the most important thing for a drummer, simply because I tell them, you're now becoming leaders. The rest of the band is going to be following you. It's not you following the rest of the band. So if you're not steady, then they're not steady. So time and technique are 2 of the most important things. But I will tell you this, I really stress, and I've heard every argument under the sun about not doing it, I really stress reading. Now, I don't stress reading because I just want the kids to learn how to read. I tell them that reading is about communication. It's not just about reading a series of dots on a page. It's about understanding, and understanding is power. One of the things that I tell them is, I can tell you to do this, but when I and show them what it looks like on the page so that they can get some understanding up here. There's a communication process that's being built. I could, in essence, go to them, place a piece of music on their stand and not say a word and still have them be able to replicate effectively. And I explain it just like reading a book. To me, the measures of music are like the sentences of a story. We go from the upper left to the lower right, and by the time we get done that whole story, we've made a complete musical statement. So that's the reading part of it. And, I've had people say, well, I really don't need to read, and it's kind of like, why do I need to do this? Think about this. This is something that came out of my learning experience. Back when I was playing as a youngster, we all used to do cover tunes and things like that. And, most of the bands that we played with all wanted to do some really good ones. I remember one of my first tunes was Hungry from Paul Revere and the Raiders and Hush by Deep Purple. Let me tell you how many records I wore out having to listen to it over and over again so I could actually learn the part. What I stress to them is, once you learn how to read and you know how to figure out what you're hearing and be able to write it down, you no longer have to do any of that listening anymore. You can read that piece of paper and play that particular part. And that has its advantages, not only when you get into the band stage, it also has its advantages in the studio stage, and it also has its advantages in the teaching stage. So, it's a big deal for me to learn how to read, simply because it makes you more well-rounded and gives you some understanding about what's going on when we're trying all these things. And the fourth thing that we work on is what I call the musicality. The musicality is more like learning about what makes us more human when we're playing. Not only, let's face it, if you're playing straight in time, you get very machine-like. That's not the humanness of music. So what I do is I teach them about feel, about how something has to be not only accurate, but has to be spaced out properly enough so that it feels good. It makes you want to move with the music. I also get into the starts, the stops, the dynamics. Most of my drummers, if not all, are required to really express themselves dynamically. There's an old typography quote that I used to use with them, and that is, if you bold a word, you add emphasis to that word. If you bold every word, there's no emphasis anywhere because it's all the same. Same thing goes for music. And let's face it, you have to be able to play with all the nuance that you can, have as much expressiveness as you can. So we go through the whole dynamic thing. They have lots of exercises with reading different types of musical roadmaps, all of the repeats and the first and second endings and all the technical stuff, the technical jargon that comes with the actual music itself. So with the technique going and the steadiness of time and being able to read it in front of them and still play musically, I think I turn out some pretty good players, at least players that have some good understanding about being a complete musician. One of the things that happens, and this is kind of special, every one of my students at multiple different levels have to play what I call a performance piece. What that basically means is you have to perform a piece alone with a recording. Every one of my students, from the youngest to the oldest, have to perform a performance piece at different levels. I usually try to make it a tune that my students want to do. And believe me, some of these tunes that I've never heard of, I never much listened to Green Day, but some of my students wanted to do it. I'd never much listened to Jason Aldean because I'm not a country player, but some of my students have wanted to do it. So I'm getting a little knowledge as well going through this. But they all have to play a performance piece that is written that they must play with an actual recording. Now, this is really, really kind of special and kind of difficult because usually the drummer will be setting the tempo, and in this particular thing, they're actually living the tempo. It's not going to move from that recording. So it's a kind of different kind of driving the bus, so to speak. Once they do it correctly in its entirety, I videotape them. And we then, even to the smallest, critique it as we're going along. I play it back from them. And if it's good enough, we make them stars and put them up on the web and, on my website or at the store's website, and kind of make them feel good about what they're doing. So it gives them a chance to show off a little bit. Now you understand my teaching philosophies. And let's face it, I use the same books that a lot of people use. I do have some really basic books like syncopation, and I actually use a drum set book that hardly anybody uses called How to Play Rock and Roll Drums by Palmer and Hughes, because it is the only book, and there may be others, but it's the only book that I know of that starts you out with a bass drum, adds in a snare drum, adds in a cymbal, and then adds in your other foot throughout its various lessons. It starts off very elementary, but it is more like a progression rather than just kind of throw all the limbs on at one time. The book is very old. It was from 1965 originally, and it's one of the first books that I started with, and I used to have a blast at it. And my kids, even my youngest, my 6-year-olds, they really have a blast at it as well. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and listen to this video. If you have any questions, I am posting my email address right now. Feel free to email me or email me with any comments. And I hope to see you again soon, maybe with a cover, play along, or maybe another just a big technique builder. So have a nice day, and I'll talk to you later.